you ran a men's group for several years, and I would just like to know what, or maybe let's start with like how do you define men's work?
Great question. Where I started is certainly not where I got to in terms of the definition, but where I now land on the definition is men's work is the opportunity to embody the relational dynamics that we so often avoid, and to do it in a way that allows for myself and for the men around me to go to the hard places, to say the hard things, to stand in the shame, and to do that in relationship with other men. So to back that up a little bit, my friend John and I started this group called Men Who Meditate in, 2018. And the thinking was just like, we were both looking around and like, going to meditation circles and that sort of thing. Just like, the question was, where are all the men? Like, there's a lot of women doing this work, but where are all the men?
That's why you went, right?
And I was very much married and committed at that point, but you know what I mean? Like, just like, where are the men? Flipping heck. And so we thought, why don't we just, as an experiment, just start this thing and see what happens? And so we started, we met every Tuesday, 6 p.m., and the invitation was just open. Anyone who wants to come, we'll meditate for half an hour, we'll teach them basic meditation practices, and then we'll have a share circle. And it grew quite quickly. Like at some weeks we'd have like 30, 40 people there. I mean, like it got quite big. And I guess I had a couple of observations. The one was people moving in and out was a problem. Like not having the consistency of presence, and almost what I would refer to as like the longitudinal understanding of someone's journey, and that relational like the dimension that is enriched by that longitudinal understanding is a challenge with the sort of work that I was pushing to get to. But that also what ends up happening is that there's one of the reasons that men's work often doesn't work is because there's a lot of grandstanding between men. Like as a primary desire, we want to be respected.
What do you mean by grandstanding? Like competition?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And there's something quite beautiful about that too. But men, a lot of the time, if we don't set the intentional containers and we don't set the rules of engagement, we just revert to our most primal instincts, which is like, what's the fucking hierarchy? Like, what's the pecking order here? Who's in control and who's the most alpha and who's got the most resources? And like, there's a part of our psyche, it's not all of us, but there's a part of us that is very ancient that reverts to that. And we should see that clearly. And what ends up happening, and what I mean by grandstanding, is there's a lot of like, let me teach you about stuff. So you sit in the circle and it's like, it's time to share. Someone starts sharing and it's like, you're not sharing. You're trying to teach me something. You're trying to tell me how the world is. And already at that stage, I couldn't articulate it as clearly. I was like, this is not the thing. Like, you can feel that moment when someone drops in and they're like, this is actually what's going on in my life. Here's the things that are unresolved. Here's the things that in this moment I'm feeling. I'm feeling challenged by you because I feel like you're judging me right now because you've got these resources and I don't. Thousands of stories like that. It's like, that's dropping in. That's real sharing. I fucking feel deeply ashamed because I love my wife, but I've been watching porn in the evenings. That's fucking real. And so we started realizing this dynamic with this kind of group that was growing, but also kind of a little bit mercurial. And then COVID hit. And we're like, great, like I'm not going to carry on this format virtually. So we basically took the kind of whatever it was, 7 or 8 guys that were showing up the most consistently and that we thought were able to drop in the most. And we said, like, let's start a smaller tight group. Meet every week. Here's some new rules of engagement for how we work. And what was nice about the rules of engagement is that it allowed us to drop the hierarchy as well. It wasn't me and John organizing anymore. It wasn't our group. It wasn't us organizing a group. It was our group, all of us. And that's what rules allow. It actually allows a lot more freedom of the individuals because we've collectively established the parameters. And it wasn't perfect, and we got some, that absolutely evolved as time went on. And sometimes we'd have to, insert new parameters and principles, and other times we wanted more freedom. But like the basic principle, which I can't recommend enough for men in this day and era, meet once every week or two with a group of guys, must be 5 or more, because you need that level of diversity and of opinions and personalities. Because if you've got everyone that's exactly the same, sometimes you don't trigger quite as much depth from each individual. Set some parameters, and they're very, like, for me, it's really simple. It's like, you will come every week. Within a 6-month period, you've got 2 pink slips, as in, like, at a moment's notice, you can drop out and be like, and no questions asked. And of course, if you're traveling for work or whatever, as long as you tell people well in advance, you can miss a session. But you don't just on a whim like miss a session. This is a commitment. And the reason it's a commitment is because if you're not there for each other, you're missing the relational opportunity, which is the work. It's in the relationships and the depths of relationship with those people that the work really, really starts to take place. And then you can have a couple of principles like, oh, it's not the one person host every week.
Mhm.
It always is rotating. So there's a different person hosting every single week. In our context, we said we have 2 hours together. The host can choose what sort of exercise we do. So it'll be a meditation or a breath work or anything in between for half an hour. And then there's an hour and a half facilitated discussion around a topic of their choice. They'll choose the topic. Sometimes it's just a check-in. Everyone just check-in. Sometimes it's like, hey, we're going to be talking about our fathers today. Let's go. So you have that as a rotational basis. And then once every 6 months, you do an offsite. Again, 2 people pair up, they host. You do whatever they want to do for that. In our case, occasionally it was plant medicine. Occasionally it was walking in the mountain for days. Occasionally it was meditate, like long meditation retreat, like lots of different variations depending on what that person wants. But Yannick, oh my gosh, what happened over time, because we ran that thing for, I mean, gosh, we only closed the circle last year. The depth that you get to after many years, and what I would say what ends up happening is that the real work is in the work between each other. It's the challenges that we have with each other. It's the moment where you say, you've been talking about this thing for 2 years, motherfucker. Mm-hmm. Enough. There's no more processing needed. There's no more. You need to step up and do this thing, and I don't want to hear about it anymore. Like, I'm sick of you.
Yeah.
And the level of that sort of confrontation can be incredibly, incredibly jarring. Yeah. And yet sometimes it's what's needed to actually spur action, because these people have constantly identified as I'm just using one example, but like in that case, you've identified as a victim. So you keep on finding victimhood, and you keep on putting yourself smaller and getting the help from people around you and keep on perpetuating the pattern. And someone says, I'm not willing to play this game with you anymore. You're better than this. Step up. And you're going to see them the next week and the next week and the next week. So that accountability is just incredibly powerful. But that's one example which would be more stereotypically masculine, as in like, I've fucking had it. There's countless more examples that are like, man, like you get to break down fully and be a bloody mess on the floor, and I'm here for you. Like, you do not need to be better than this in this moment. Like, we are all around you, loving you, protecting you. And that's actually what you need right now. Even though you might feel a sense of mistrust because you perceive some men to be more powerful, even though we're still here. And what that does to someone's entire system as it relates to their trust in the world, their trust in relationships, their trust in men, is like they go back into the world and they show up better for their partners. Sometimes, I remember one of our weekends away, I screamed for 45 minutes with 6 men holding me. And it was the depths of rage I did not know existed in my system. Mm-hmm. And I needed those strong men around me to access that place. And this gets very primal, hey? Like, this isn't just like, oh, let's figure this stuff out intellectually. This is like all the way to the core of us as mammals. I can tell you I arrived home a better husband from that. So we'll talk about Manosphere, and that's the men's work is not Manosphere. I guess it could be. But the men's work that I've been exposed to, you speak about Brothers Rising, I think about Sacred Sons, I think about groups like the Mankind Project. This is about the embodiment of our innate capabilities and the seeing and the integration of our shadows. Because we're fundamentally safer when the fullness of our being, not just the nice parts, when we are in touch with the fullness of our being, and we can see it clearly, we can share it clearly, we can hold ourselves accountable and bring in support for the parts that we don't yet have fully integrated or under control. There's so much safety in that, man.
100%. 100%. I mean, that's how we met originally, right? Totally. Like a year ago when we both attended that Sacred Sons immersion here in Cape Town. And there were many, many very profound and transformative moments. But similar to what you just shared, for me, obviously the most intense moment was, I came into this weekend with still a lot of shame and anger and pain in regards to an abortion I had with my girlfriend like 2 years prior. And I've done tons of quote unquote work on that. I don't know how many hours I spent talking with my girlfriend, with therapists, doing all kinds of, body work, be it breath work or whatever other work. And yet one of the most powerful releases where I think it was on day 2 when Peter, like out of nowhere, proposed to do kind of like a ritual.
I remember it.
And he gave me a pillow representing our unborn baby. And you guys gathered around me, gave me all the time I needed. And I think I never cried that much in my life, in the most quote unquote masculine space with only men around me. where, most people would say, or people who criticize man circles or man's work, I think many of them think that it's like a unemotional space, or where emotions are not allowed. But if done correctly, if facilitated correctly, it can be the most emotional space for man ever.
Totally.
Right.
Couldn't agree more.
And it was a life-changing experience. Just that, being held by a bunch of men, just being there, being present, giving me all the time I needed, to feel everything, which I'm still, like, today, 1 year later, immensely grateful for. And then, Rob, what I still try to understand, I had this chat with a German journalist when I was back in Germany last summer, and we were talking about, man circles, and he obviously coming from a completely different background. He was actually investigating a kind of right-wing gathering, which we struggle with in Germany, just like in so many other, especially European countries at the moment. And he could not understand the benefits or the potential in man circles. Like, he was very, very limited to the risks and the danger, which can be political radicalization. And he was so against the whole emotional process, because he said, well, what kind of qualified person, what kind of qualified staff do you have in your man circles? And I keep thinking about this conversation, obviously, and I would just be interested in your perspective, and maybe even opening up this whole discussion to, I don't know if you agree, but I like to say we are in a global masculinity crisis.
I absolutely agree. And I think the risk that we stand at right now, that we stand on the precipice of, is that we then over-index on aspects of masculinity that we feel that as culture broadly, where culture feels demasculated. And so if the broad narrative is men are bad, men are toxic, if you embody traits that are more exclusively on the masculine continuum, that you are harming society. If that's the narrative, then you're going to have the Andrew Tates of this world who stand up and say, fuck all those people. You get to be like me. What I'm going to do, you're already feeling marginalized, outcast, like guilty by association, or like stigmatized, all the things. And now someone stands up and says, no, you know what? And it's a strong person who looks good, who's made lots of money. And they say, you know what? Fuck all that. You can be just like me if you take my 5-step program and you do these things. And it's an us versus them. It's a you take back what's been taken from you. Man, that's the right-wing radicalization. That's the stuff that I personally just, the problem is there's a glimmer of truth in it.
Yeah.
And the problem with the glimmer of truth is that you can take that and then you can just exacerbate it to the point of personal gain. And that's what my view, that's what we're seeing in a lot of the Manosphere. The alternative opportunity is to embrace the space between. And the nuance is something that the social media doesn't particularly respond well to. The algorithms don't do well with nuance and subtlety, and it's not that all aspects of masculinity are bad. In fact, not at all. But aspects of masculinity, when expressed to the nth degree without appropriate integration, like that's bad. So let's take aggression. That is inherently masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take aggression all the way to the extreme and you use it to dominate and suppress people beneath you, etc., we've seen that doesn't create harmony in our society. There's times for it, but that as a default, it just doesn't work. But guess what's also on that continuum of aggression is boundaries. Like, hey man, we're not going to spend time together today because I'm going to spend time with my kids. That's aggression. That's a form of aggression.
Yeah.
It's just much further back on the continuum.
Yeah, very subtle one.
Very subtle one. But if you discount all of aggression, like guess what? Someone comes up to your family and wants to engage inappropriately with your kids, and you're not intervening?
Yeah.
Are you joking? Like, are you joking? So for me, this is the problem of how we've thought about a lot of this. Is like anything at its extremes creates imbalance. Nature doesn't do well with imbalance. Like, it's a constantly dynamically balance-finding machine. I don't want to call it a machine. Beautiful living organism that is constantly searching for balance. And when we operate at the extremes, and that's both on the feminism and on the masculinity side, like we're going to have problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I see this opportunity for modern masculinity to say, no, like let's embrace the nuance. Let's embrace the space between. Mm-hmm. Let's accept that there are aspects of masculinity that were over-indexed, especially, you think about like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, like there were aspects there that there was good reason for the feminist movement to rise up against and say, no, like enough. And yet the answer isn't going all the way to the left on this. The answer isn't coming into the center, but that doesn't do well for algorithms. Yeah. And that for me is one of the reasons I'm just not particularly interested in social media. I'm not particularly interested in news. I don't think that's where the real change happens. I don't think that, Instagram psychiatry is the way that we're going to solve this stuff. My experience is that our wounds from childhood are relational wounds. They are very important because they shape our psyches. There's no way out of it. Like, no one comes into this world, it's like, oh, my parents didn't do like that's the deal. You incarnate, you're going to attract, I would say you already have that frequency to attract the actors and the players in your life to have those experiences. Then the real opportunity for the game of life is, can you see those patterns, transcend them, and move ever so gradually more towards freedom? Mm-hmm. And so the opportunity I would assert for us men is, can we step into the nuance? Like, can we step in the relational field? Because that's where our wounds took place. Can we step into the relational field? Can we see ourselves and our typical patterns clearly? Can we enter the mess? Because that's something we as men don't typically like to do. We like to be right. We like to have order. We like to have structure. Can we step into the mess? And can we see ourselves a bit more clearly and start to transcend? Because that makes us more safe for our families. That makes us more safe for society around us. And I think that's the gift of men, actually, is creating more safety in the world.